Welcome to our April Crime Book Chat episode.
This is our last and final Crime Book Chat episode of Season 5. It's a new series that we started this year, and it's been an absolute blast. And today we're excited to get to know 4 more amazing authors whose books cover many areas of crime fiction. So this is going to be really fun.
Yes, they all have great new books that have come out to great reviews, so that'll be interesting to talk about. And so let's get started with the introductions. So first, we have Kimberly Giarratano, and she's an author of mysteries for teens and adults. Her debut novel, Grunge Gods and Graveyards. I'm going to say that again so, you know, the sound editor can fix it here. Grunge Gods and Graveyards won the 2015 Silver Falchion Award for Best YA at Keller, Nashville. A former librarian, she is currently an instructor at SUNY Orange County Community College and a reviewer for BookPage. She is also the chapter liaison for Sisters in Crime. Born in New York and raised in New Jersey, Kim and her husband moved to the Poconos to raise their 3 kids amid black bears and wild turkeys. I'm wondering if those are the animals or the whiskey here. While she doesn't miss the traffic, she'd give anything for a decent bagel and lox. Okay, so Kimberly, it's great to see you today. And can you tell us a little bit about your novel?
Absolutely. My novel, Death of a Dancing Queen, came out on February 14th, Valentine's Day. And it is set in Bergen County, New Jersey. Yes, beautiful, beautiful cover, shimmers in sunlight, which I would like to see some sunlight. Well, we did change the clock, so that's in my favor. And it's a 24-year-old woman who takes over her grandfather's private investigation business in order to just utilize those flexible hours so that she can take care of her mom who has early onset Alzheimer's disease. And her first case involves a missing woman, a cold case going back 30 years that gets her embroiled in decades-long feud between a neo-Nazi skinhead group and a Jewish mob. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. It is
I love
fun.
the title, Death of a Dancing Queen. That's a great title, too.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, it is my pleasure to introduce today Rick Bleiweiss. Did I say that correctly, Rick?
You absolutely did.
Okay, well, stay tuned. Rick has crafted the best-selling, award-winning Pignon Scorbion historical mystery series. Correct me, Rick, because I'm sure I messed up.
Nope, that's perfect.
Score. So I'm very excited to tell you more about Rick. In this historical mystery series, he blends his love of the past with the twisty deliciousness of a whodunit. And I just think that's why, right? Any historical readers love that. He has recently also contributed a wonderful story to the mystery anthology Hotel California, which is an apt title for what I'm going to tell you next. Before becoming an author, Rick started his career in music as a rock performer, a Grammy-nominated producer of over 50 records.
Wow.
He is a record company senior executive who has worked with some very low talent people like Clive Davis and Melissa Etheridge, the Backstreet Boys, Kiss, U2, Whitney Houston, the Bee Gees, and other legends. Since 2006, as a publishing company executive, he has acquired works by noted authors and celebrities. So we could just go on about that all day. But first, we want to know about your latest release.
Well, my latest release, Murder in Haxford, is the second book in the Pignon, Scorbion, and the Barbershop Detectives series, although it is a standalone. And it's basically a classic whodunit that takes place in 1910 in a fictitious countryside town in England. And the barbers and shoeshine man assist Scorbion in interviewing witnesses and suspects and solving crimes. And it's got humor and it's got no gore, nothing like that in it. And I just have a blast writing it.
That
sounds like it. I love it. I love it.
Yes, that sounds fun. So on to Rebecca Keller. She's a writer, artist, and professor at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Her artwork has been exhibited widely, and her fiction has appeared in Calyx, New Fairy Tales, Hawaii Pacific Review, and others. Her short fiction has been twice nominated for a Pushcart Prize. She was a finalist for the Chicago Literary Award and gave a TEDx talk at the University of Chicago. Additional achievements include a Fulbright, a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Illinois Arts Council. So, Rebecca, it's great to have you here today. And I have to tell you, listeners out there, you got to look at her website description, her bio, because it's just really funny. Tells all these crazy stories about what she's done in the past. But we're here today to hear about her book. And go ahead, Rebecca, tell us about it.
Thank you so much. The book is called You Should Have Known. And it centers a 72-year-old woman named Franny Green at the moment when she is pressed by her children to move into a senior living apartment complex. She fell and had a concussion. She's in sound mind and pretty sound body, but they convinced her that this was the way to go. So against some reservation, she moved into an assisted, or it's not really assisted living, apartment complex. And while she's there, she makes friends with a woman named Catherine, only to discover after she's gotten to know this woman that Catherine's husband is the corrupt judge that she blames for the death of her granddaughter and the real, shattering of her family and her daughter's mental health. And what she does with that information comes up with a pretty morally complicated situation. She, in a moment of poorest judgment, she gives in to some of her worst impulses. And she's a former nurse. It involves a medicine cart. I'll leave it from there.
We're all like, oh, I love the older protagonist. That just you had me at hello on that. That's just awesome. Okay, finally, to round out our group today, we get to welcome Richard Meredith. His career, and for those of you who are longtime listeners, Richard was on an earlier episode. Chris, do you remember what season that was?
3,
I think. And that was really fun. Richard's career as a marine scientist and a wildlife biologist has provided rich fodder for his writing. His newest novel, Maskirovka, but Richard, correct me?
Maskirovka.
Thank you. The Russian Science of Deception draws heavily on his work as an analyst in the petroleum industry. His years on commercial fishing boats formed the backdrop of his thriller The Crow's Nest, which also was a Silver Fashion Award-winning novel at the 2021 Keller Nashville Mystery and Thriller Writers Conference. Richard, great to see you again. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me back. Did I come into the right panel here? These guys are pretty accomplished.
This is an amazing panel. So, Richard, tell us about your latest release.
I'm thinking the same thing about all of you.
I know. It's amazing, right? So tell us about your latest release.
Well, the KGB may have changed its name to the SVR, but it's up to its old tricks, only this time with a new puppet. That's the American public. So Maskirovka, the Russian Science of Deception, is, I call it a genre cocktail. It's 1 part murder mystery, 2 parts spy thriller, and a dash of police procedural mixed in. It's a story about how the Russian intelligence agency, the SVR, infiltrates most respected American institutions in order to subvert the U.S. petroleum industry in order to maintain their stranglehold on the European energy market. My protagonist is a young San Francisco detective named Steve Wynn, who was cut loose on his first solo case, which is the death of a young accountant with a public interest foundation. And everything points to natural causes, and it should be a slam dunk rule out homicide, but he's not ready to close the book. And to the dismay of his chief, he starts investigating anyway. But without means, motive, or opportunity, this anxiety-racked law school dropout starts digging. What he uncovers is the secret malevolent alliance among this Russian billionaire oligarch a duplicitous foundation director, and a renowned philanthropist, all hell-bent on tightening Russia's stranglehold on the European energy market by choking off U.S. exports. And if it means corrupting the American electoral system through illegal campaign contributions, political blackmail, and propaganda worthy of Goebbels and Riefenstahl, and a few dead bodies, so be it.
Wow.
All right. That is definitely a lot of different
That sounds
things
like
being juggled, right?
Yep. Love it.
Right.
Several plot lines.
Yep.
While I was listening to this, I just really love to hear about all your different main characters. They're just, all of them seem like they have like, you know, some unique qualities. And I wonder what inspired you to write these characters. And so we're going to start with the ladies. And I want to say that both Rebecca and Kimberly, you both have strong but very different female protagonists. And they both deal with the problems of aging, actually, in very different ways. And that's what kind of drew me to these characters. I guess we're all at that age where we're kind of taking care of, you know, or moving into aging issues and stuff. So anyway, I thought we'd start with that, and you guys can tell how you came up with these characters and what you want us to know about them. So let's start with Rebecca.
Yeah, well, first off, I was really interested, Richard, in your formulation, a genre cocktail. I feel like it's not a typical, it's suspenseful, but it's not exactly a mystery. I think the publisher wasn't quite sure. It's kind of literary fiction with a dash of mystery with a dash of literary fiction in a blender. So, I mean, I wanted to write a story about a good person who does something bad, and who then has to kind of deal with the fallout. But what really started me thinking about that is thinking about somebody who is in a situation where they feel like they can get away with something. Or if they didn't get away with it, what would the consequences be? Mm-hmm. And at one point in an early draft, I can't even remember at this point if it's in the final book, but she said, what are they going to do? Throw me, at the time she was 80, my protagonist was older when I started, an 80-year-old lady in jail. And she realizes that in this setting, this kind of closed setting, everybody assumes that old people have no agency and won't do anything. And old women in particular are kind of culturally invisible. Mm-hmm. And she realizes that provides her a lot of freedom, you know, that she can act in ways and no one.
Plus the way she doesn't have it in her mind, she doesn't have a whole lot to lose.
Right.
And she's maybe wants to finish this off before it becomes her end, you know?
She doesn't have a lot to lose. I mean, she's, you know, there's a lot less ahead of her than behind her. And she is so upset at the destruction of her family that she sort of allows herself to go down a dark path. Mm-hmm. And so the genesis of her character partly came because I wanted a situation in which someone would feel that way, would feel that they could act without being caught, and if they were caught, wouldn't really have to suffer many consequences. And one of the prime ways of doing that is I'm thinking, well, an old person, you know, who's thinking they're not going to suspect me. I'm invisible. Mm-hmm. And even
that
if
lack
I
of
get
agency like becomes a superpower, kind of, right? When you overlooked, that's kind of interesting.
Right. So being invisible, she realized, gave her a lot of freedom. It was a kind of a paradoxical realization. So that's how I sort of arrived at her. But, you know, also I was interested in the situation. You know, you don't see older characters in books, especially ones who are not doddering or quirky or ill. And I mean, I have no problem with any of those. But you know, somebody who's in their 70s. I mean, we all know people in their 70s they're just people, you know, they're just themselves. And one of the reasons I had trouble finding a publisher was can't tell you how many people said, I can't sell a book with an older protagonist, which struck me as a real failure of imagination.
Wow.
It was astonishing how many people said that to me.
Well, I think they're wrong because there's a lot of people that are retired that read and they want to see themselves in the...
Right. And as you know, her daughter, and I know Kimberly's book involves a daughter, her daughter is a very important character. And who reads books? Middle-aged women and their moms. I mean, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
so as thousands of book groups, I know we have a Mister in crime here, but you know what I mean? It's a really, so anyway, so that's how how she sort of developed, is I wanted someone who was very much a regular person, but older, but who people saw differently because of her age.
Interesting. So, Kimberly, where did your character come from?
So I also wanted to explore age, and I have a younger protagonist because she's 24 years old and her mother has early onset Alzheimer's
Wow,
disease.
that's tough.
So I wanted to explore what it would be like to be young, but feel like you're looking at your future every time you look at your mother and you take care of your mother and you're really terrified of what's coming. So that was my area of exploration that I wanted to kind of touch upon, because people my age, I'm Gen X, you know, we are taking care of our parents, or many of us are finding we have to take care of our parents. And I kind of wanted to work through that, but I wanted to play with a younger protagonist because it isn't really expected that you would think of a 24-year-old protagonist who,
No, it's not often.
Thankfully,
yeah,
but by being young,
because I have a 24-year-old daughter, and I hope that she
yeah, I mean,
doesn't have to do that anytime soon.
Explore a young woman who's not, like, she can't even enjoy her youth because of the fears that she has
right.
for herself when she gets older. But I do have, her grandpa is also a character in the novel, and I had a lot of fun writing him. He is one of my favorite characters that I've ever written, and he's pushing 80. So
the age thing is very interesting because I had worked with an editor and I was wanting to have an older character, and she similarly, Rebecca, she said, you know what, you're not gonna be able to sell this if you. And I wasn't even. I can't remember. I don't remember what I thought. I think I'd put her at like 50 or something. And she was like, yeah, they're looking for 30s. And I thought, really, still? I mean, that's such a bummer. So, but I love, Kimberly, I love that you're the span, you know, a young person who hasn't even quite found their own way, right? And then that adds a lot of pressure to your protagonist, for sure.
I enjoy generations in a book. I enjoy multiple generations. I love having grandparents. And in my young adult novels, I have grandparents feature. I just enjoy it. It's fun.
They set up a different kind of frame. You know, they have different frame for the experience that they're taking in, and it makes it a little richer soup, I think.
And he's her mentor. Like, her grandfather is her mentor. And
that's so nice.
Yeah, and he brings, just by nature of who he is as a person, brings a lot of comedy to the book, because he is funny just by who he is. So I had a lot of fun with that too. I'm probably going to end up, if I've read one of your books, and I'm going to probably read the other one, just because I also have a work in progress set in like that same type of setting. So I'm kind of curious to see now, because Rebecca's is very psychological and not as dark as it sounds like. Kimberly, is yours considered a noir or? It's hard boiled. It's hard boiled.
Okay.
Noir, Rebecca's would be noir to me. Noir to me signifies good people doing bad things.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Whereas mine is squarely hard boiled, where justice is served at the end. Your protagonist does have a moral sense of right and wrong and wants to see justice done. And I really wanted to play with the old detective tropes. It's a private eye novel, whereas mine doesn't span different genres. It's really firmly in the private eye subgenre. It really plays with tropes. And I have a lot of fun twisting it.
The genre thing, I mean, find it like so they just break down so quickly, you know.
Yeah.
So many books that I really love don't fit neatly in any like in the end, you know, Franny ends up solving a crime that rather than committing one. So it's like all over the map.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't even know what to call this. And it sounds like a lot of us are in that situation.
Well, I think the main overriding thing, and they've switched a lot of it from like, the mystery title to crime fiction. So it can encompass a wide range, and so we definitely have that represented here. And so now on to the guys. Both of you actually have detectives as your main characters, but again, very different. Yours isn't, Rick?
No, he's a police officer.
Oh, well, it says right on the label, detective, whatever. So I thought, okay,
that's the
police detective, actually. Yeah. And Rick's is the same way. His is a police detective. I mean, Richard's, sorry.
Right.
Anyway, so you're investigative policeman, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Except yours, Rick, is set in over 100 years ago in England. So tell us how that character came about.
By the way, just as a sidelight, I'm about to be 79 years old and have my first novel published when I was 77.
Oh, yay!
And,
awesome. That's awesome.
In fact, I do presentations across the U.S. to seniors that you're never too old to chase your rainbows. So, I'm a firm believer in that.
Oh.
But going back to my character, there are two types of writers, basically, pantsers and plotters. I am a pantser. I do not plot anything out in front. I have no idea what I'm going to write. And the story just plays itself out through me in my head. And my job is to sit at my computer keyboard and try to type out what I'm seeing play like a movie in my head so that whoever reads the book can see what I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole Scorpion, actually, I didn't even have a name for the character, just the whole concept of, and the first crime that's in the book, because each book has 3 crimes in it, just played out in my head one day. And there it was. And then I just built a novel around what initially started as a short story that just came to me. And that's how all my writing is.
So you had that plot, that whole idea first, and then you said, okay, now as I'm writing, I'm filling in all the characters and the scenes and
a ton of research. I mean, when you're writing historical, research is key. The minutia is what makes it either believable or not believable. So that was staggering, the research.
I imagine.
Why did you pick the era you did?
I am a huge fan of Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot. And the year 1910 was kind of an interesting year in between because Holmes, according to Doyle, was deceased by then. And Poirot was just transitioning from Belgium to London and just kind of getting a start. So it just turned out kind of to be a transitional year. So that if you had one of them on this end and one on that end, then you had my character kind of bridging them in the middle.
Oh, that's cool. Mm-hmm. That's really cool.
And so now we're on to Richard. And Richard, your character is set present day. He's a detective, but then you've got this huge, like you said, genre-bending plot. So how did it come to you?
Well, let me just add that there's a third category to what Rick was discussing, the pantsers and the plotters. I'm what you'd call a plotter with a D. It just takes me so long to plot.
Plotter.
Fair.
Yeah, there's those too, right?
Yeah. The backstory for Steve Wynn, I have several people I know that have that suffer from social anxiety disorder. And for those, if you don't know someone like that, it's how they get through the day. It's just a miracle, and all the little tricks they have to do to psych themselves to do things and to be around people and that. So I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to put a detective in that situation? So, and he starts out, he's a brilliant school student at Berkeley, goes to Stanford Law, but he has to drop out because every time he's called upon in class, he freezes up, just can't do it. And so he's got this cousin, Tina Noe, who's also an attorney, but she has a specialized practice in, I call feral law. She'll pick up any case. It's believed that her spirit animal is a pit bull, but she's Steve's wingman or wingwoman or wing person, so guides him along. So he's got this crutch with her and another cousin that gets him through. prepares them for court cases and that. But I wanted that condition. I like to have my protagonist have 3 levels of conflict. One is the major story, something he can solve. The second is, well, because he got his shield so young, he's got all this problem within his department. They're always kind of questioning how he got in there so fast. So he's got to fight that. And also he's kind of paranoid, but it's kind of only in his own head. And then the third is how he has to deal with the social anxiety disorder and going to the psychologist, afraid to take medication because if he got to a court case and a defense attorney would say, oh, you're on drugs and all this. So he's got to work it out, kind of at the street level. So I've just kind of put him and then this other plot was kind of developed. I was reading some articles back in 2015 about Russians actually doing some of the things I wrote about. And then come to find out 2016, we start talking about Russian collusion. I thought, well, this is a nice fit because, all the Russian oil has 7 pipelines that come through Ukraine and except for the Nord Stream and Nord Stream 2, which, so that was kind of the genesis of both the character and the story.
And I imagine you had to do quite a bit of research as well.
I did, but boy, there's this handy thing called the internet that really helps out that much.
Oh, you mean you guys aren't just like going to Russia or going to England for your research?
Well, it's interesting. I was actually, our neighbor's son was stationed. He's with the State Department. He was stationed in Vilnius, Lithuania. And we went to visit him just when I was starting to write this. And we were at a party at his house, and he married this woman who's from Lithuania, and she had her brother and all his friends there. And they were the last generation that had to learn Russian. The newest generation that didn't have to. Oh. And so all these couple of lawyers and a doctor, at this little party. And I said, I'm writing this book. Can you guys help me? Need some swear words in Russian. Can you help me out? Oh, we had a great time for the next hour. But I was trying to do it phonetically.
That's awesome. Okay, so listen, we're going to take a little midway break here, and Christie's going to grab behind her what we call the question in the bottle, and it's just this sort of random question you might get to at the bottom of a bottle.
We like to drink our wine.
I don't know what's going to come out, so I'm just saying this is
okay. Well, this is a fun one. Would you rather travel the world for free for a year, or have $50,000 to spend however you please?
Travel the world, easy.
Oh, yeah?
Kimberly's like, done. Yeah.
Yeah, no question.
Is that for everybody?
Travel for me.
Yes.
Yeah, travel. Yeah.
Travel. Yeah.
Everybody said travel?
No. For pre-COVID, I would have said travel. At this point, I'd rather have the money and do something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything fun you got in mind?
I don't know. I'd have to think about it. Not off the top of my head.
What about you, Kathy?
I initially was like travel, but I travel. I love traveling, and so my answer really would be travel. But it's it's not that pleasant of an experience to actually do the traveling sometimes.
Right. Maybe we should put a caveat. You can travel the world for free, first class.
Oh, then I'd be done. Yeah, we'd all be done. But also think of what. Like when you said there's no parameters in that $50,000 and you start thinking about what you could do with that sounds pretty exciting too. I don't know.
Yeah,
what about you, Christy? You're the one that drew this crazy question. Travel.
Yeah,
you're travel.
Yeah, I would definitely travel, but there isn't anything that says I can't do it in style or how I can do it and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel like the money equivalent isn't fair for a year for free travel.
I know. That's what I got this question online. I should have changed it to like $1 million or something because I was like, of course I could travel with 50,000 only a little bit, but I could travel.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm really excited to ask you guys all about your experience in the publishing industry, what surprised you and has been great and what has been challenging. And I would love to start with Kimberly because as a librarian, one of my very favorite careers in the world, you've really had a life of books. And so now that you're, writing and publishing, what's great, what's been surprising, what's challenging?
Well, Death of a Dancing Queen is actually the first book from a new imprint. It's a new crime fiction imprint called Datura Books, and they are an imprint of Angry Robot books. So Angry Robot does science fiction and fantasy, and they're a small press in the UK. So honestly, and prior to this, I was independently published. My YA stuff was stuff I put out on my own for the most part. My first book was from an independent press, but I got my rights back later. They're great. They weren't.
Yeah.
I just got my rights back. But anyway, so it's been for me like a 180, going from doing everything myself, hiring cover designers, hiring my editor, getting proofreaders, doing formatting, any type of ads, to having somebody do all that for me and get PR and hook me up on great podcasts and get me into bookstores and, the best part, libraries. So prior to, the only library I was in was my library down the street. As I said,
you had an inn.
I was like, buy my books. And I have a habit now of going on WorldCat and checking all the libraries that have my newest book, because to be reviewed in Library Journal and Booklist and Publishers Weekly and the New York Times, I got reviewed in the New York Times.
Yay! Congratulations!
Thank you. And it was a good review. I was nervous because they don't have to say anything nice. They could totally.
Yeah, but oh my gosh, that's great.
So to have all that happen has been incredible. And my publisher, because they're smaller, I email them. I email the publishing assistant frequently. Like, I feel like we're besties. I don't know. I could be her mom.
She feels the same
point.
way, or he does.
I hope so.
Now, how did you end up with this publisher? Did you have an agent that got you to the publishing, this particular publisher? Or?
I did. So, interesting story that I will not drag out. My book was on sub for almost 2 years. And what we kept hearing from publishers was that female-led private eye fiction was a tough market. You know, which boggles my mind because of Sue Grafton and Sarah Paretsky and Janet Ivanovich. But the sales for private eye, female-led private eye, are not what they see with Sue Grafton and Sarah Paretsky and Janet Ivanovich. So I got turned down a lot by many publishers. And it was incredibly frustrating. And I sort of just put it back in my mind. And I said, all right, we'll start with something different. But my agent was talking to the publisher for Angry Robot, and they told her, hey, we're starting a crime fiction imprint if you have authors that might fit our mold. And she's like, I do. I have a great author. And she, we always pitch my book as like Veronica Mars meets New Jersey, because that's really what it is. And my British publisher was like, send it to me. I'll read it in 2 seconds. And she did. And I was like, within a week, she'd been sent the manuscript and read it and responded and said, I think we can make this our lead title. So, yeah, it does. So when I tell that story, it is insane, because for 2 years, I just
2 years is a long time. Yeah,
that's such a good anecdote.
And then to have such success at that.
The anecdote about what you can control and what you can't in publishing. When you're not self-publishing, as you say, you're independent publishing. And I mean, we've talked to so many authors that are indie or self-published, and I can see the attraction of that because you have some semblance of control of things. But as you say, the workload is just enormous. And so it's such this is the perfect story of the balance, right? Of what you can do and then wait till that moment, and how cool.
And for me, having done indie publishing, I just wanted to see what a traditional publishing experience would be like. And I felt that, if it doesn't work out, I can go back to indie publishing. I don't have to shelve my books. I don't have to give up on this. There are options for me. Yeah. And all of my YA books that I've published in the past, that I published myself, I'm very proud of my work. I'll reread them and be like, damn, this is so good. I am very proud of my book. They are indistinguishable, in my opinion, from what you would think is a traditionally published book. They are professionally edited. They have great cover art. They are professionally formatted and proofread. So I just knew that was an avenue I could always go back to. But I had found my agent, and I love my agent. She's such a champion. She's a great partner. I really adore her. So to get to this point has been really wonderful. And it's just, again, I saw my book in person at a Barnes & Noble, and I got to sign it, and I freaked a little bit, and I yelped in the aisle, and somebody looked at me funny, and then I'm explaining. I'm like, you don't understand, this is my book. I wrote this. They didn't care.
They didn't care.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Okay,
that's great.
So I'm curious to ask Rick about his process, because as he said, he's newer into this industry. Good and bad, challenging and rewarding.
Well, I'm not, I don't know how that I'm really that newer into the industry. I'm newer as a writer, but I've been an executive in a publishing company now for 17 years. So,
Wow.
I do have a little background in it. To me, the biggest thing that I learned was more as a publishing executive than even as a writer. And that was, and I kind of will some way build on what Kimberly said, but in a slightly different manner, was how different agents are. And that there are some agents that are incredibly supportive of their authors and really do all sorts of different things for them. And then other agents get a deal and then kind of don't do anything after that. And that's the end of what they do. And I don't know how many authors actually realize that there is a huge spectrum of difference between agents.
Oh, yeah.
So Rick,
I don't think anybody's mentioned that.
Yeah,
to us
I've never
before.
heard that before. So how would you
Wait, just
share
real quick.
that? Yeah.
My agent is my second agent. My first agent sucked. So
Okay.
he was terrible. And I will say that. So it took me my second agent before I found somebody that just, really turned that.
Supports you? Is that
where
what
I
it
was
is
like,
when you say?
This is what this is supposed to feel like.
Yeah.
Not that dread where I'm like, where your gut is telling you like, this is not correct. So
Right.
I just wanted to interrupt. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'd be like, no.
No, absolutely.
my
Yeah, this is a
second
conversation.
Yeah. So Rick, what would you add about that? Like, what would you say to people? How do you vet agents?
Well,
Because authors are so happy just to get signed, right?
I know.
So can you
No
imagine getting
question.
signed and having like a gut feeling, like Kimberly mentioned, like, oh, I know, but I want an agent,
Well, I made it my passion after that to make sure that, because there was nothing online to suggest that this agent wasn't above board. There was nothing. And I scoped and I even got a recommendation. And when I started talking to other clients, we all realized that there was a pattern of behavior that was pretty bad. And Query Tracker is probably your best bet for finding out information. So, and always get references, always.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There's no easy answer to your question. There's no place really where you can go and they're rated as such.
We're going to call you, Rick.
Yeah, well, I certainly know quite a few of them. I don't know all of them, but I'm very lucky because, I've got a great agent too, but I knew the agent before, we got together on my books. So I had a head start, if you will. I'll tell you the thing, though, that is both a writer and as a publisher that has surprised me over these 17 years is how many locations will not take books by self-published authors, which I think is a mistake. Because I think a good book is a good book, no matter whether it's published by the author or published by a publisher, but we're still living in an environment where there are places, bookstores, libraries, and others that will not take self-published books. And I think that's true. I self-published a book under a pseudonym before I ever did this, and I know what everybody goes through. And I just, I could have done better if more places were open to it.
Didn't they just recently, maybe USA Today or was it New York Times has stopped reviewing indie published books for the bestseller lists? And so,
one of the problems is, according to Boker, there are 4 million books published, every new books published every year in the United States. And more than 50% of those are self-published. So one of the kind of issues is if books in general are the forest and each individual book is the tree, how do you get your book seen? And how does somebody like USA Today get to choose which one they should do? It's a double-edged sword. On one hand, they should look at all of them. On the other hand, they can't look at 4 million books.
Right. It's just too many. Yeah.
Interesting. Richard, thoughts? Good, bad, second book now?
I had an agent for Maskirovka under a different name. I went through the whole process. I think I sent my spreadsheet of all, 200. God, and finally someone said, "Hey, I kind of like this." So, but he could not sell it, to the the big, the big houses. So after about a year, the contract was up, and I thought at that point, on a whim, I submitted it to Kirkus Reviews, and came back and got a star, and then I used that star to go to a couple of different small publishers, and they liked it. This Blue Water Press in Florida, and they liked it. So it's a small publisher, so I have to do all the marketing. They take care of most of it, but I do most of the marketing. But then Kirkus put it on the list of 100 best indies for 2022. So I was happy about that.
Congratulations.
Good for you.
But I'm
That's
still
huge.
trying to get an agent and a big house.
So you're on the backside. Okay.
Yeah, it's tough. I figure I'm like I use the analogy. I'm playing. I'm out of high school baseball. I'm into a double A. I have not made it to the bigs yet.
Yeah.
Or the garage band. We're still practicing in my uncle's garage.
Awesome.
There you go.
Awesome.
As long as everybody's naming their publisher, my publisher is Blackstone Publishing, which I think is one of the best mid-sized publishers out there, but I'm prejudiced.
Yeah.
They're putting out
we've
some
read
big.
a lot of books from
We
Blackstone.
have had a lot of
Yeah.
books from Blackstone. Yeah, we have. All right, Rebecca, your turn. Tell us who, what, good, challenging.
Well, it sounds like a lot of you, I come from another, I have an analogy with another profession. I'm a visual artist. And I always tell my students, I didn't get enough rejection and work for no money as a artist, so that I decided to become a novelist, like an insane person. And, and one thing I always like to offer my students, and I tell myself, is, the best hitters in baseball, another professional analogy, the very best hitters in baseball fail 7 out of 10 times. Mm-hmm. So I like to keep that thought in mind, because I don't have an agent. I submitted, I knew this book was good. It won a few awards, or was like runner up for a few awards. I got a lot of great feedback, but a lot of it was, I don't think I can sell a book with an older protagonist. There was a lot of people that asked me to the prom, but nobody put a ring on it, so to speak, in terms of agents. I'm mixing metaphors all over the place.
I love
it. But at any rate, like Kimberly, I'd kind of said, I didn't want to self-publish, partly because I just didn't feel like I had the bandwidth for that kind of work. And I had also, kind of set it aside and gotten very deep into another book. And I thought, this one, it won a few awards and things for unpublished works or first chapters and things. But I sent it a direct submission to Crooked Lane Books, which is my publisher, which is one of the few mid-level publishers or mid-sized publishers that takes, on occasion, unagented manuscripts. Mm-hmm. And within a couple of weeks, the editor got back to me. Awesome. And the upside of that publisher, they do have a PR thing. It's been reviewed in Publishers Weekly. It's an audiobook is being made by Dreamscape, and they are distributed by Penguin Random House. So they have a huge reach.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I went into my local bookstore to ask about doing some copy. It hasn't come out yet, so it comes out next month. I asked, to have some signed copies. And he said, well, let me take a look. And he said, we already ordered it.
Oh,
it was great.
Oh,
nice.
How nice is that?
Yeah, it was awesome, right? And he said, it's because Penguin Random House. Mm-hmm. So I was thrilled, but I still don't have an agent.
Oh, really?
You'll get one now.
I never did get an agent. And after I was offered the contract, I thought, should I do this kind of back asswards and get a agent? But then I thought, I've already done the work. Why do I give them money? And I also have a lot of friends who have had not great experiences with agents. Either it was a perfectly collegial relationship, but they couldn't sell the book. Mm-hmm. Or they put them through making all these changes in this book that they just didn't quite feel right. And then, after a year and having torn apart the manuscript or redone it, they ended up not being able to place it anyway. So, this the publisher has a right of first review for the next one I'm writing. It's not really, I don't know that it's their kind of book, so who knows what will happen. But I'm hoping that this one does well enough that I could, either
piggyback on that somehow.
Do it again without an agent, or find an agent that could then, help me.
Get you in a different area.
Christie, I think this is one of the most candid and informative and helpful conversations we've ever had about finding that right agent. And
yeah,
it's like dating, but with a weird.
Well, one of the, I know, in the art world and probably in the writing world too, there's a certain amount of performativity, right? You're always trying to like make yourself, there's a certain kind of like presentation of how successful you are that people have, but that's really not honest, and it's really not helpful. I queried probably 70 agents. That's a lot of rejections.
Isn't this the best part of this industry? I think the best part is the authors that you meet and the connections that you make. Listen to all how profusely you're all talking about Sisters in Crime. Just the deep love of Sisters in Crime, and it's those connections. I think that's so lovely. All right, Christie's going to have a final question for you. So,
oh yes, okay,
be prepared.
Yeah. So, I just like to go off the wall a little bit, and so Cathi and I are going to start a crime fighting team, and we want each of you to offer us one of your characters for a spot on our GOB squad. Okay. So which would you volunteer? Which of your characters would you volunteer to be part of our crime fighting team, and what role on the team would they be? And we're going to start with Kimberly.
I'm going to give you Gramps. His name's William.
I was hoping you'd say Gramps.
Gramps. He's going to be your logistics guy.
Okay.
He's going to be your reality check.
Yeah.
He'll tell you if a plan doesn't work.
Okay.
That's going to be.
We'll need that.
You'll need him. Yeah. He's also great.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Richard?
Tina, no. She'll be your badass. She'll get it done.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Nice.
And she'll listen to Gramps too, right?
He'll need a lawyer.
Rick?
I guess I'd have to offer up Scorpion. He'd probably be the leader.
Ooh.
Okay.
As he would.
And he'd have a British accent, of course.
He would indeed.
A very handsome one, I'm sure.
Okay, last but not least, Rebecca.
I have two. Either Franny, the protagonist, your medical person, and she has a lot of enormous insight into people's motivations, but also a person she gets to know who also lives in this retirement home, named Evan, who is sort of a professional noticer, and this guy notices everything.
Yeah, he's good. He's good.
A professional noticer.
And he, I think he was an investigator, but not officially, but he just notices things and he puts two and two together. So
yeah, I think either one of those would get along with Gramps, and then we would we'd have that whole like understated, nobody knows it, but they're being watched, Well, thank you guys. This has been a lot of fun. We really enjoy hearing all about your books, and we wish you the best success, right, Cathi?
Yes. So we will, of course, provide the links to everybody's websites and social media, so all of our listeners can reach out to you and buy your books and leave reviews as we would request them to do. So I think all we have left to do is do a cheers to everyone's outstanding success. And
look at I've already got to the bottom of my glass. Cheers.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode.
Subscribe to our podcast on our website, gameofbookspodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you liked what you heard, you can give us a 5-star rating or review.
You can also subscribe on YouTube, where you can watch and listen.
On gameofbookspodcast.com, you can find all the information about what we talked about on this episode. And you can sign up for our newsletter and enter our fun contests and giveaways.
We also post our stories and links on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Hope to see you there.
I can guarantee you that we had fun today.
And we hope you did too.
Cheers.